Hi everyone, Selena here and welcome back to Beyond Borders Teaching. Today we'll be looking at cultural adjustments, teaching culture shock, navigating the differences in schools. So everyone, a topic I wanted to address today in episode 3 is culture shock, the unexpected differences and surprises teaching in another country. This applies specifically to international teachers, teachers who are teaching abroad, as well as those who are considering teaching abroad. Of course, the culture shock refers to that in languages, values, various custom, norms, behaviors, social habits, religion, and even the cuisine. So, some of the biggest culture shock to me were student behavior, parental involvement, curriculum and teaching methods, as well as religion. Now, I'll start with student behavior. So, student behavior is something, of course, in every school district around the world, is something we try to have control over. Of course, a class can only continue to succeed once there's proper management in place to regulate students' behavior so that they are engaged in the learning process, so that they are not a distraction to themselves and others. So that's something, of course, throughout every classroom you will see worldwide. Now, with the classroom student behavior, what I'm referring to, where I'm from, generally the behavior of the classroom, of the students in the classroom, is regulated by, of course, the teacher first. And if there's any challenges, we would may call in principal or the administration. That is also done here abroad. However, other than just the teacher and the principal, there may be other personnel who may come to assist that child if they are having behaviors that is beyond the realm of the classroom, the teacher's ability in the classroom to control it. So they may have social workers that may pay them a visit, or different persons in administration may come to help out with whatever the behavior might be taking place with the child. Sometimes that may result in a pullout, depending on the extremeness of behavior. The child may be suspended. Sometimes it's in school suspension, sometimes it's home. And then, of course, a meeting may follow depending on the severity of the issue, which is something similar to home. Of course, with student behaviors, I hold my students accountable for their behavior. I always start with high expectations as to what I expect of them, for us to have that commonality among respect, what they deem to be respect, what they deem to be respectable actions towards speaking with adults, treating with their classmates, and respect as well towards themselves. So, student behavior. And parental involvement was also something that was a culture shock to me in regards to, in my home country, parents are definitely involved with their kids. They want to know what's happening in school. They may call you to ask if they can see you after school to find out what's going on. Or if their child comes home with whatever complaint, you are guaranteed to see the parent next day to find out what took place. Now, that is also done here, but back home, we would utilize maybe the cell phone or send the parents a message, a written message in a notebook home. However, abroad, we utilize something called Class Dojo. So it's an online platform where we can easily message the parent to let the parent know of any behavioral issues, or if the child may be feeling sick, or if the parent wants to communicate a different way the child or student may be getting home that afternoon. We utilize Class Dojo a lot to speak with the parents, as well as to put up various notes for if there's skate night, if there's sweet frog night, which is an ice cream place, various things we may use for fundraisers or various events in the school. We will utilize Class Dojo to get that message out there. So it's not something, as I said, in my home country, we would just utilize messaging the parents or calling the parents to come in and have meetings, which is also done here. The students are given a quarterly report that goes home, as well as they are given a monthly, report on their academic performance. And after that is done, for the quarterly report, we have parent-teacher conferences where we speak with the parents to let let the parent know how the student is going with their work, what are areas we see that they need supporting for in the classroom, what are areas they need to work on, what are some of their strengths we have noticed, etc. So that's done every quarter. The student, which is every 9 weeks, we meet with the parents either in person or, depends on your school, you can have teleconferences as well, where you dedicate that time to speak with parents about what you observe in the classroom. The curriculum and teaching methods. I would say in the US, the teaching is more informal. What I mean by that, it is more student-centered, and students are given a little more freedom in terms of their learning. They are able to do more, as I would have mentioned in the previous video, more group work, more independent activities. They have various stations where they may do activity cards and stuff like that in order to help themselves with their learning. Of course, the teacher is there as a facilitator and guider and guiding them along as to what they need to do. Versus in my home country, the teaching is more formal. So the students are taught, the learning is more rote and memorized. The students take a lot of notes to memorize strategies and formulas, example for math. And there's more, as I would have also mentioned before, there is less move about because of the size, for one. Our classes tend to be often very big in my home country, and there's not really enough room in the class for, like I would have mentioned before, small group or having the students with various rotations for them to do various assignments or practice on whatever they are learning. A big shock for me personally was the religious aspect. I have taught board schools all my life. When I say board school, I mean Catholic board school. I also would have taught only boys all my life, other than when I was in university. And for a couple of weeks, when we would go out and do teaching practices at schools, I would have had the opportunity to teach a mix of boy and girl at those practices. But generally, I have taught mainly boys throughout my teaching career. So that was something I guess also new for me. But back to the religious aspect I'm speaking of, because I taught at a board school, we observed a lot of religious practices and traditions. Our day began with the national anthem, the pledge. We would always pray to start the day. The students will have a prayer before lunch. They will have a prayer after lunch, and they will even pray to go home. And when there are special religious times throughout the year, for example, Easter, the children will follow the way of the cross, where we would say the rosary and things of that nature. However, here in the US, because religion is more something done by the state, it is not something necessarily practiced in the school. So it is something state level, so therefore they don't really put that religious aspects into the school. So the student, for example, now in my school, we would start the day by listening to a morning meeting. So the principal, or this time we have this year, various members of staff will give the announcements for what the students are to look forward to that day. They may announce what is going to be served for lunch, as well as they may announce it for someone's birthday, and they may also end with a quote of the day. So that's how the morning routine is. Also, for my school, we use the acronym PRIDE. So it stands for perseverance, respect, integrity, determination, and empathy. And we would say our PBIS pledge, as I would have spoken to that in the previous video, which stands for Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. So those are some of the things and the formal aspects we start the day with. Versus in my home country, we would start the day with prayer, prayer before lunch, prayer after lunch, prayer at home time. So that was something truly surprising and shocking to me. So something that was the same, of course, in the curriculum and teaching methods, we covered the same 4 areas, which is ELA, math, science, and social studies. The differences, though, in terms of assessments, assessments generally happen at the end of a term. A term would be a period of 3 months, and then at the end of that term, the student will be given a general assessment for the various subject areas. There would be some teachers who would do assessments week by week, month by month, depending on what they choose to do with their class. However, in abroad, teaching abroad, assessments are done more regularly. So there will, of course, as I would have explained before, there are various units. So for example, with math, there are 10 units. For ELA, many units as well. And the kids are given a pre-test before they start a unit. Sometimes there's an interim test in the middle of a unit, and then there'll be a post-test. Now, the units have different amount of days depending on the various standards, as I would have spoken about in the previous video. The units may last 14 days, sometimes a unit may last 21 days, and they will have assessments throughout that unit. To see how they are going, I often compare my students' pre-tests or interim tests with their post-tests. And because everything is digitized, they have various colors to state how well your student has understood that particular standard. So the color red for the data means not yet. The color yellow means limited. The color green means approaching, and the color blue means mastered. So I can look directly at that to know, okay, I may need to revisit this particular math standard with this student, or with these group of students. I may need to revisit this particular standard with ELA for these students. So that's something that I like because it is digitized, and the computer or the system would have already worked out that they gave 3 questions on this standard and the student got 1 right or got 2 right. It's able to directly tell you where the student has some limitations, where they need more support. Versus our assessments back home, the assessments are pen and paper, and of course, you may have a little more challenge in order to figure out exactly the learning target you need to reach with your students. As well as, that's another thing, tests here are all on the computer. So the students are tested on the computer, and it is multiple choice. Of course, there's reading and stuff to take place and choose their correct answer, but it's multiple choice. Whereas in my home country, the test, for example, if it's a math test, it's not a multiple choice. They are given a problem and they have to work it out. They have to show they're working as well. And that's something even though their test is multiple choice here, I give my kids scrap paper and I tell them, show you're working, work it out, show how you have gotten this answer. And for the main test, they have benchmarks, which is a main state test. I would collect that paper to see how and what working they did for the various subject areas. So that was something different. As well as in my home country, when students have reached to the end of primary school, they take something called the SCA exam, which places them, which is a placement test for what secondary school they may go to after. In the US, it is not like that. They are given types of state tests, but it is not a test that places them in any particular middle school or high school. So that's something that I noted that was different. The lesson planning, as I would have spoken about before, we have a PLC time in order to plan lessons, and the assessment learning aspect as well. We would look at the data in order to plan for our small groups and various things for the kids. The assessments here, the kids are also given big assessments like the benchmark. There are 3 benchmarks, as well as there's the big end test for when they have finished their grade. We have what we call the EOG, which is the end of grade exam. And looking at that data as well, we can also use that as a guide as to if the students have mastered whatever grade they are at and they are deemed ready for the next grade. For the next topic, I wanted to address school culture and environment. So, something that was also different to me is the fact that it is less common to find in public schools that students wear uniforms. Whereas, generally, in public schools in Trinidad, students, it is mandatory for them to wear uniforms in the primary school, secondary school level, versus up here, the students are allowed to dress in regular clothes based on whatever they feel comfortable with wearing. For me, I was quite surprised. My very first year, there was one of my students who came to school with long nails. So, of course, it being my first year, I made sure to ask if that was okay. And I was told by the other teacher, my other grade level teacher, that yes, they can wear nails, it's fine. So that was something new for me because, like growing up, my dad would give stories of his nails needed to be cut low or he would get in trouble at school. For me, growing up and going to a Catholic school was the same thing. Our nails needed to be cut low. Our hair could not have been in any fancy hairstyles, so, and having a particular color shoe, particular color socks, you have to wear your belt, like very rigid, rigid, versus here students dress in casual clothing to come to school. So that was something different that, I didn't have any feelings about it. I like freedom of expression, so it's good that the kids can dress into what they feel most comfortable in. Another cultural diversity aspect I observed, of course, I would say both the US and where I am from is definitely multicultural. And I love that the culture is celebrated and how diverse it is here in both abroad and in my home country. So, in my home country, we have major celebrations, for example, Carnival, which is going on right now in my home country. We have Diwali, we have Eid al-Fitr, we have Emancipation, Republic Day, Independence Day, all those celebrations to name a few. Versus in the US, there are many, many cultural celebrations as well. For example, this month in the US is Black History Month. So that's being celebrated. In my school, we're going to do a wax museum with my kids. We're going to display and talk about the person we chose. And also they would celebrate things like Hispanic Heritage Month, to name a few. Now, what surprised me though, many of our cultural celebrations at home, it is a day off. So it's a holiday, it's a public holiday, it is a day off. Versus some of the celebrations here, it is noted, it is celebrated, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will be a day off. So that was something surprising to me because I know in my home country, once it's a celebration, it's a day off. So that was something new. I also would like to spend some time talking about the social and professional adjustments. So, colleague interactions. Well, I like to consider myself a social butterfly, so I can pretty much get along with everyone. So, I easily make friends. I genuinely have interest in getting to know people. And I would say as well, my principal at the time, she really played a big role in that. Like we would have our weekly staff meetings, and she'd always start it with some sort of brain break, some sort of way for us to get up and walk around and know each other, some kind of quick quiz. She'd always start it with something refreshing, something engaging, something for us to get to know the persons in our building. So I really like that interaction there. The work-life balance for me, I would say for my first year was the hardest. Of course, coming to a new place, learning all the new stuff I have to learn for school, planning lessons. It required a lot of time I had to be patient with myself and not always aspire for perfection, because that's what I tend to do sometimes, but just get it done to the best of my ability and also not to be afraid to ask, because that's the only how I would learn and know, what to do next time. So for my first year, the work-life balance was a bit challenging. I would often find myself, my school day ends at 3. However, my first year, most days I was leaving school at 4 o'clock, at 5 o'clock sometimes, based on what I had to do, what I had to prepare for the next day. But as I would have explained before, I quickly learned time management practices in order to make sure that I wasn't overworking myself. So I still met the expectations of the job, as well as was able to maintain that work-life relationship. So the community support as well plays a huge role in our schools. There are different programs who would donate stuff to our schools. Sometimes, like for the winter, there was a big project. The students got winter jackets and shoes. They were so excited. Recently, they got gloves and beanies. So there are different community programs that reach out to do things for our students. There's also an after-school tutoring program that is of no cost to the students, and they are picked up and they get to go to that after-school tutoring. So that's something as well, as a school, as a county, that is appreciated for our students to get the help they need in whatever regard. So on this last point, I wanted to address how I handle culture shock. I would say by embracing it, by embracing the newness of it all, by having an open mind, by being willing to learn, being willing to stretch, to bend, to adapt, to grow in every way. And that really helped me quickly adjust to all the new cultural norms and practices of my school. And not only my school, living abroad on the whole, adapting to those cultural practices. So personal strategies I would have used is just have an open mind. Don't be afraid to find out more, to ask questions, to embed yourself into it. Let the experience fill you. For example, when it had Hispanic Heritage Month, where I live, the downtown area, they had I would say, a display. So on the whole street, there were different persons doing different dances, choral reading, playing musical instrument that represented the Hispanic heritage. Persons were selling food, jewelry, and anytime it had one of those events downtown, I am sure to be there to learn more, see more. Aside from that, coming to the US as an international teacher, I have made so many Hispanic friends. The training group is very small here. I have made lots of Hispanic friends. And of course, through that, I have a deeper appreciation for the Hispanic culture as well. So that's one of the things I would advise. Come with an open mind and know that whatever you want, it can be achieved. You are the determining factor of what life will bring to you and give to you. So you can grow with it by how you are able to receive it. The last point, I call to action. So I would like for you all to share your own cultural shock experiences for those teachers who are currently teaching abroad, or those persons who have had a culture shock teaching abroad, whether it be in the US or wherever you have been. Please tell us down below what are some of cultural shock experiences you have experienced. So at this point, I'd like to remind you, please like, follow, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. I would really, really appreciate that as you continue to tune into this channel. And a last note, a quote to end with: adjusting to a new culture is tough, but you don't have to do it alone. So for our next episode, we'll dive into how international teachers can build strong support system and truly find their tribe. It's all about finding your tribe. We need that support here, of course, as international teachers in the US. Know that you are not alone, and it will be a wonderful experience if you let it in every way. I truly believe that. Thank you all so much again for tuning in. Continue to like, comment, subscribe, share, and I look forward to speaking to you all again next week. Bye.